hi once again, everybody, and welcome to NAUI's Dive Team Report. I'm your host, Greg Martin. The modern dive industry is a relatively young industry, not even 100 years old, but it has had a very rich history from both men and women. In fact, it still surprises me today when I meet some of the industry's leading women who've been a part of it pretty much since day one. I always try and make a point of asking them how they wound up getting into diving into the first place. People like Erin O'Neill. Welcome to the show.
You had asked me how I got interested in diving, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a long story, but I'll try to make it short if I can. I was a water person from the time I was born, and I was a competitive swimmer and lifeguard and waterfront. And in fact, interestingly enough, I was at the very first NAUI ITC in 1960 in Houston.
That's been a day or two.
And I didn't know that until I didn't know what it was. Some of my girlfriends that I had been on the swim team with were doing some water work with a bunch of guys that had on scuba gear, and I went down to watch. And years later, like 20 years later, when I met Gary Howland, he told me that was the first NAUI ITC. Do you know who Gary Howland is?
I do, yes.
Yeah. So I'd already met Al Tillman because I was an LA County instructor. I became an LA County instructor the same time I became a NAUI instructor. All of the annual underwater instructor certification course in LA County is an automatic, is also considered an NAUI ITC.
It's interesting how close, I mean, obviously that was kind of the beginnings of things, and there was, I'm sure, a lot of sharing and things that were going back and forth. But I think, Erin, the thing that kind of strikes me is we've always really considered diving to be, you know, this very masculine kind of sport. And the more and more I talk to ladies like you, I find out that you guys have been involved basically since day one.
Yes, even before that, I think I was experimenting. My dad had a welding supply company, and he had been a diver during World War II because he was head of the Houston Shipyard Welding Division, and he had also worked on tunnels in Houston. And so he had this diving background, which I didn't even know until many years later we were talking about it. And I remember he told me, he said, it's so much easier to train a welder to dive than a diver to weld. Yeah. He had, I guess, experienced that during World War II quite a bit. But he had oxygen cylinders, and I would go down to Galveston, and I was the only girl that I did fill-in work as a lifeguard in Galveston, and this was back in the late 50s, and so I was very involved. And we used to experiment with those oxygen tanks. You know, we didn't have any regulators or anything like that. We just experimented with trying to carry them on our backs, rig up a harness, and I don't remember what we were using as a breathing apparatus. I just think it was something that welders used.
That's a crazy story. Do you have any idea, Erin, how many women there are in the Women's Diving Hall of Fame?
Well, it's probably close to 200 now. It started in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
Armand Zigan, who was the founder of Beneath the Sea dive show, he recognized the lack of recognition for the work women were doing in the underwater world, and in celebration of them for the year 2000, the millennium, he decided to have a Hall of Fame that was really supposed to be just that one annual deal. And he recognized 72 women across the country who had done outstanding work in scuba, exemplary work in scuba, that had never been recognized officially by the dive industry. And it was something that we all struggled with. If you weren't Jeannie Clark or Sylvia Earle or Zale Perry, you were never going to get into any kind of Hall of Fame or any kind of major recognition. So he named 72 women in 2000, and then it came to light that there were some people that needed to be recognized that hadn't been, so he added another 20-something the next year. And then with this group of women, who are women and not content to rest on their laurels. They formed a nonprofit organization and started the nonprofit Women Divers Hall of Fame.
It's a fantastic opportunity for women to be recognized in as I said, a sport that is dominated in a lot of ways by men. When you start looking down through the roster of the women that have been part of the industry, I mean, I'm kind of scrolling down through right now, and here's Kathy Church is in here, and Celine Cousteau, and Meg Donat, and just all these names that go beyond, and of course we have to put Erin O'Neill in there as well. I mean, you guys have been a part of this since day one.
I don't know about day one, but very early. And some of us, like Zale, of course, were early. They 50s, So I got first certified in 1977 by CMOS, and then in 1980, because people weren't really recognizing CMOS in this country. And then in 1980, I went through NAUI certification class, and I became a diving instructor in 82 or 83, I think.
Talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame itself and how women should be supporting that.
Well, women do support it. It's a very strong organization, and it's full of extremely active members who participate in activities, who come to. We generally right now have a strong presence at 3 dive shows: DEMA, Beneath the Sea, and the Long Beach Scuba Show.
Mm-hmm.
And also we have strong, not quite as strong, but also at Our World Underwater, and anyway, at the major shows. And then all of our members come to those. We give seminars at several of them, and especially the Long Beach show, because so many of us are California West Coast divers. We have a dive travel program, which is very popular. We started it in 2010, and we have 1 to 2 dive travel trips a year where the gang gets together and all goes diving for fun. But the most notable thing I think we do is we pay it forward. I think this last year we gave away close to $70,000 in scholarship and training grant funds.
And
we now have
I think that's just fantastic.
Huge program. Yeah, we have if you go on our website and you look under scholarships, we have so many scholarships. Some our members fund, and others that we fund ourselves from the funds we're able to raise through our fundraising activities as well. And so they cover the gamut from beginning scuba all the way for handicap scuba, for handicap training scuba, photography, art, science, a lot of graduate and undergraduate education, and advanced diving of all levels. And it's pretty cool. Our scholarship training grant program is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the website, and it's quite impressive. If you haven't had a chance, be sure and check out wdhof.org, wdhof.org. I'm looking here at some of your bio, Erin, and you've just done so many different things over the years. Is there any one thing in the dive industry that you like more than anything else? I mean, you've written, you've done some stunt work, all sorts of things.
Well, it was without having a dive shop. We were not a retail facility. My partner and I, who was my close friend and my diving buddy, we both left mid-career, and really good careers, to start our diving company, which was called the Morgan O'Neill Underwater Company. And we really had to do a lot of variety of things to make a living. My partner had advanced degrees in marine biology, and my background was more in writing. My college education was in literature, and I was an avid photographer. It started shooting photography in the late 60s in New York City. Sometime in the late 70s, took that underwater with my first Nikonus, and she was also an avid. We were both very much documentarians, marine life of all sorts, and so we produced marine life educational programs that were used in all kinds of programs. But I think teaching diving was something that we both really loved, and loved bringing divers along, and we had a perfect safety record, so we were approached to teach, to organize school programs and things in Los Angeles. We presented seminars. I remember our first seminar at IQ was on beach training, beach diving training, surf training, and there was standing room only. People were so hungry for this new effective way to safely teach surf training, to teach people how to go in and out of the surf, which is something that we had learned in LA County. We loved all of that. We loved giving talks and travel talks, marine life talks, whatever. So, but when I was, one of the things that's required to graduate from the LA County Underwater Instructor Training Program is you must conduct and complete an original research project. And the one that I chose was, I wanted to know what women divers were taking away from their basic scuba instruction, because I knew that I had taken very little, that there wasn't any gear adaptation, there wasn't any talk about temperature differences or gear handling differences or maybe even health differences. And like most of us, we just learned, if anything, that menstrual blood did not attract sharks. And that was pretty much the extent of mentioning the gender in basic scuba class. And
Sure. Still is.
So I conducted this research project, and I was shocked to see that some women didn't even get that much. No one was getting anything. And so Ellen and I, when we started our company, really started concentrating on how we could help the female diver, especially in our colder waters where we have the wetsuit constriction of our breasts and chest areas and have to wear a higher percentage of weight. And just the harder work. And also the sexism. I remember when I was going through assistant instructor training, NAUI assistant instructor training, that they wanted to make sure that I was strong enough to pull up a 300-pound man off the bottom on a breath hold dive. And I understood that. That was fine. I had faced that in lifeguard training back when I was a teenager. But at the same time, they didn't make him prove that he could pull up a 300-pound man. They let him pull me up, and I weighed 125 pounds.
Right.
There was just no recognition. You had to prove to be a better diver than a man. It was amazing. Not the same, not as good as, but better because of your physical, differences in your physique. So I think that we wrote a series of columns for Discovery Diving magazine that was the most popular articles. So then we ended up writing a book on the female diver called When Women Dive, and it sold out. A couple of editions, it just sold out, and we never got around to writing a new edition, but it was a big hit, and we loved that. We loved training women and children.
I guess I have to say, from all of us in the dive industry, thank you for kind of muscling through and leading the way and continuing with your efforts, helping with Women's Divers Hall of Fame, and we appreciate you guys blazing the trail for us. I
would like to leave with one thing that I was reading. Al Tillman wrote a book in the 90s called I Thought I Saw Atlantis. He has a whole chapter on NAUI, starting NAUI. He ends the chapter with saying, I only hope that the vision of public service always survives as the heart and soul of NAUI philosophy.
That's good.
And I love that, and I still love that. And I've, I'm not saying that people shouldn't make a living teaching scuba or whatever they're doing in diving, but I think this idea of some altruism and some not cutting corners and the love of diving and the love of the safety of diving is what has always set NAUI apart. And I'm very proud to be a NAUI member for, 40 years, I guess.
That's good. That's good. Erin, we say thanks. Thanks for joining us and giving us some time today, too.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share, Greg. Appreciate it.
And, of course, if you have an interest in learning to dive or you would like to take any advanced classes, be sure and check out your local NAUI dive shop or check out NAUI.org. And, of course, if you like the podcast, please subscribe to our iTunes or Google Play channel so you don't miss a single episode. And that's this episode of NAUI's Dive Team Report. I'm Greg Martin. Thank you for listening. I'll see you underwater.